Good evening. We'll take two without music this time, sadly. As I said, my name is Briony Benjamin, and it is my absolute delight to be your MC this evening. There is nothing more energising than spending time in a space with a group of passionate, committed human beings making the world better. So thank you for being here. Now, tonight's event, Democracy on the Edge, the Fight for Human Rights and a Prosperous World, couldn't be more timely. Citizen activism has always been important, as we know, but never more so, given that liberal democracies all around the world are increasingly under threat. Let me please extend a very warm welcome to everyone that's in the room tonight. And up the back, you'll see the cameras. We've got people joining us all around Australia online. So hello, thank you for being with us. And you'll have a chance to ask questions later. So we're really thrilled to have you joining in. But before we get started, let's of course begin where we always must begin, by acknowledging the custodians of these beautiful lands. We acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional custodians of the lands we meet on today. We recognise their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting the coastline and its ecosystems since time immemorial. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. All right, so we're going to kick off and get into it. Before we do, very, very small bit of housekeeping. If you do need the bathroom tonight, out past the lifts, turn left, and there's some really nice bathrooms. So there you go. You might feel like you're at the airport. So what's unfolding in countries as diverse as the USA, India, and Turkey shows us that we cannot take democracies and international rules-based order for granted. I'm seeing a lot of nods in the room. Indeed, if we care about climate change, global health, and ending world poverty, we also need to care about safeguarding our liberal democracies. Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek said, "Democracies work best when citizens are actively engaged." And she goes on to say that Results gives every citizen the opportunity to tell their government that they care about international development, poverty, and Australia being a good international citizen. So tonight is a celebration, and it's also an acknowledgement that citizen activism does not just advance a certain cause, it also serves as the backbone of a healthy, thriving democracy. Soon we're going to hear from Results founder Sam Daley-Harris, who I had the pleasure of interviewing earlier this week, who's written a seminal book on the topic, Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy. And then we're going to move on to an interview with the amazing Caitlin Figueiredo, who's down the front here, who co-founded Girls Take Over Parliament. And you'll all have a chance to ask questions if you'd like. So as we're talking, try and log those questions so you're ready. And that goes for our friends joining us online tonight. And then we are going to be handing out awards for outstanding leadership in the fight to end global poverty for a journalist, a parliamentarian, a results advocate, and a fellow. And finally, we'll be having some words from the incredible Nagaya Chorley, CEO of Results. Then it's time for some drinks and nibbles in the foyer, so we hope you'll join us for that. So now we're going to kick off with our interview with Sam Daley-Harris. Now, as the founder of Results, he doesn't really need much of an introduction, but I will give him one anyway. His vision some 40 years ago has resulted in billions of dollars for some of the world's most pressing challenges, from world hunger to children's immunisations to tackling diseases like TB, HIV and malaria. Sam's work has touched literally millions of lives, so we'll cut to an interview with him now. Hi, Sam. So great to have you on the line. Tonight is obviously a celebration of the Results community, and we have Results volunteers and advocates and fellows, directors, staff, media, and leaders from the international development sector here with us at this event. So I'd love to go back to the founding story of Results. Can you tell us, how did it all start?
Okay, great. If I could just start by just thanking everyone in Results in Australia for the contribution you are making and carrying the vision forward. And now to the founding, I'm not going to do a kind of, and then he did this, and then he did that, or anything like that. I want to do what I would call know your why and share it. The Harvard professor Marshall Gans would call it the story of self. What happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to this commitment? And I urge people to think about your why as you hear mine. What is it that happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to this event, that got you to this commitment? So here's my story of self. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12 years and taught high school music. And then 44 years ago, I founded the anti-poverty lobby Results. And a lot of times I'm asked, music, poverty lobby, what's the connection? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that point me in a different direction. The death of a friend, a high school fraternity brother, around high school graduation in 1964, and the assassination of US Senator Robert Kennedy around college graduation in 1968 got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, I'm still a musician. I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger, and I go to it's put on by the Hunger Project, and I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. I mean, it's inevitable in my mind because there are no solutions, I think. Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event and it's obvious right away there's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature. People will just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978 and 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students, classroom by classroom, on ending world hunger. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from the US National Academy of Sciences, Food, Nutrition Study, and others calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress, like your MP? I don't want to know if you wrote them. I don't want to know if you met them. Just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly. 6,800, over 97%, could not tell me the name of their member of Congress. And results grew out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington in this case on the other. So that's my story of self, a kind of what happened in my life and what decision did I make that got me to this commitment. And so again, I urge you to think about your why and certainly write it down if you've not thought about it much, or if you have, make sure you share it often and share it with others.
What a brilliant place to begin this conversation, and so fascinating hearing about how you came to your story of why, Sam. So thank you for sharing that. Sam, so 30 years ago, you wrote a groundbreaking book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy. And it was a book that President Jimmy Carter at the time called a roadmap for global involvement in planning a better future. So I'd love to hear from you. Why was the book important then? And why, given that you've just relaunched it, is it important now?
Well, let me just talk about now for a moment. It's as if uh, this question was going to come, and I had an interviewer, and I'm going to read a quote from an interview in January. This was on a US national radio program. It goes to 350 radio stations, and like I'm thinking of the one in South Florida. has a listenership of 5 million. It doesn't mean they all listen, but it's in a community or a set of communities at large. So there are lots of people listening. And the host, this was question number 2. Basically, he was saying why this book was needed. This is his question. I'm going to read it because I do it at the beginning of all my talks. This is his question. Number 2. The passive nature to our politics now, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. It's much more of an effort for me. I don't participate in the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What's the way out of that? I'm not an activist, but you know what I'm saying. That is why the book was written. It's a grind. It's a grind. I know you know that. What's the way out of that? And the first thing I said to him was, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart said, we aren't passengers on spaceship Earth. We're the crew. Well, are we? I think we are. And if we're crew, how does crew operate? What does crew do? Actually, the whole quote is, we aren't passengers on spaceship Earth. We're the crew. We aren't residents on this planet. We're citizens. The difference in both cases is responsibility. And the second thing that I said to him was, futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. Well, yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything. I mean, why would I if nothing I do makes a difference? And so I think it's those little change of perception and change of attitude that's really important in this conversation. But I wrote, because I think that journalist spoke for millions of us around the world, not only in the US, around the world, in Australia and elsewhere, um, when he asked that question.
Cynicism is obedience. I love that. Just a brilliant mantra. Like you said, speaks for so many people. And you think, well, I'm checked out, so I'm not part of the problem. But that is the problem. And just that concept of the crew is fantastic. And what a great crew we have in this organization and in this room tonight. So, Sam, my next question is, you write a lot about transformational advocacy in contrast with transactional advocacy. So can you talk to us about the difference between those two things?
I will. I want to just let folks know that the original title of Reclaiming Our Democracy, the subtitle was Healing the Break Between People and Government. And the latest edition, the subtitle is Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy. And it is a handbook for transformational advocacy. And I think that's the important piece. We've been doing it for decades. We just didn't have a name for it. And it was a professor at Johns Hopkins, Hari Hahn, who actually named the transformational advocacy. Everybody knows transactional, sign the petition, transaction complete. With transformational advocacy, we're encouraged, trained, and then succeed at doing things as advocates we never thought we could do. And as a result, we see ourselves in a new light. We see ourselves as community leaders. A transformation takes place. I'm going to tell the tiniest story from the book from the US. There's a woman, her name is Maxine Thomas. I always say she's amazing. She is, but we're all amazing if we get the right training. She said when she joined Results, actually, she said, I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. And then it's a longer story, but she goes to Washington, D.C., and she has her first ever meetings with her members of Congress. And she says at the end of her first day of meetings, I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something transformational. Well, yeah, she was started at, I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. And she ends it, I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something transformational. That's a short story version of transformational advocacy.
Oh, what a turnaround from, someone that cares and they want to be involved, but giving them a way they can actually be effective and feel euphoric in the process, that this can actually be a joyful, and uplifting experience as well. Not often maybe what people might
Right.
think. Sam, so you've no doubt seen a lot in your lifetime, and especially the change that has been made possible as a result of people-powered movements. Now, given that where we are in the state of the world right now, the impacts of climate change, rising inequality, horrific conflicts that are gripping parts of the world, what is your advice to our audience? How do we hold on to hope?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I would ask, who do you want to be in the world? What is your why? Uh, are we passengers or are we crew? We can decide that every day. And I just also want to give one example of our work together. Results in the US started lobbying on child survival. Now it's more referred to as maternal and child health, and we lobby for other things like Gavi and the like. We started lobbying in 1984, and Results in Australia started a year or two later. So we're talking 40 years ago. And we've lobbied every year on what was child survival. Now it's more maternal and child health. And when we all started lobbying, UNICEF was reporting 40,000 child deaths around the world every day from preventable things like measles, coupled with malnutrition. And every year, lobbying on these issues, not only these, but including these, the latest numbers from UNICEF in the book from 2021 is that the 40,000 child deaths a day has fallen by 66% to 13,800 a day. Now, it's still scandalously high, but it feels pretty remarkable being part of an organization that contributed so powerfully to a 66% decline in global child deaths. And I remember in 1986, the head of UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund at the time, Jim Grant, the volunteers had generated 90 editorials, not letters or op-ed, but where the newspapers were enrolled in doing editorials. And we would mail them out 5 at a time, 4 at a time to this key list, and including the head of UNICEF. And at the end of the final mailing, he did a handwritten note on our cover letter and sent it back to me. He said, I thank you in my mind at least weekly, if not more often, for what you and your colleagues are accomplishing. But I thought I should do it at least once this year in writing. And so that kind of recognition, well, that would be 28 years ago, for 38 years ago. Recognize that you're part of something that's already played a key advocacy role in a 66% decline in global child deaths. And answer who you want to be in the world and step into that.
Well, thank you, Sam. How inspiring and uplifting as well. Thank you for your guidance, for your brilliant leadership and the wonderful work that you do in the world, and for being with us all tonight. Caitlin Figueiredo. Let's give her a big warm welcome, and she's going to come take a seat over here. We'll get set up. All right, she's here, she's here, she's here. All right, so I'm just going to give you a little intro, Caitlin. So, just might embarrass you, She's we've got a real underachiever in the room tonight, I have to say. Caitlin is the founder and CEO of Jazeera Australia, a youth-led social enterprise on a mission to unleash a fearless generation of women and girls. Who can get behind that? Yes, please. At 22, Caitlin was listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 for co-founding Girls Take Over Parliament program, a Jazeera Australia bipartisan program that promotes representational democracy and increasing female participation across the Asia-Pacific region in the political space. Welcome, Caitlin.
Thank you.
So, let's give her another round of applause. Why not? So, Caitlin, can we just start with hearing a bit about your story and how you came to this space?
Sure. I think I'm going to take his cue and start with my why, because I think that's...
Love it, yes.
I think that's actually a really powerful way to sort of talk about it rather than, again, doing, I did this. So my why is not... I think it was given to me by my ancestors. So a little bit about my background. I'm a really proud Goan Gaudi woman. So I have a tribal heritage, and my family in Goa have always been fighters against colonizers and colonization, and they've always been engaged. It's always about how can we take care of our lands, how can we take care of our people, how can we continue on. And when I was little and my family came to Australia, I was born on Ngunnawal Ngambri country, and my grandparents told me the story of where we came from, and they told us the values of making sure that you have your integrity, making sure that you always give back, and service is one of my core values. And they basically told me that my goal in life is to leave this place better than when I found it. And looking at their guidance and sort of growing up and just seeing so much, I guess, pain and devastation, and also knowing that there was like, Caitlin, you were very privileged to be in Australia. All the opportunities that you have is so privileged, and you need to remind yourself of that, but also think about what's happening back home in India, what's happening, that my dad grew up in Kenya, so look at a more of a global perspective. And so my why is service. And there was an amazing quote which honestly changed everything for me when I went to Washington a couple of years ago. It was by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And everyone knows his I Have a Dream speech, but I'm not sure if you know of this quote. So in 1959, to a group of school students who were marching against segregation in schools, he said to them to make a career of humanity, to commit yourself to the noble struggle of equal rights. You'll make a better person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. And when I looked at that quote, it kind of stopped me in my tracks, and I'm like, that's my why, for sure.
Wow, I got ripples of goosebumps as you were talking and sharing that quote with us. Thank you so much. What an incredible background to bring to what you do. Now, Girls Take Over Parliament, I just love this, and I love the name of it. It's a brilliant program, and it's now spreading across the Asia-Pacific region. So can you talk to us about what inspired the program and the central roles women can and must play in building healthy, thriving democracies?
Yeah, no worries. So when I was 19 years old and I started at university, I remember my lecturer, I was doing law at the time. I didn't graduate law. I realised I shouldn't be a lawyer. I should be an activist and let the legal minds handle our justice system. And I remember my professor sort of asking two questions, and he was like, okay, put your hands up if you want to be a lawyer to make lots of money. Half of them put their hands up. And then they were...
And the rest were lying.
Yes. Yes, true. And then the second one, he was like, okay, put your hands up if you want to make a difference. And then obviously I put my hand up, and he was like, you're not going to make a difference. Just put that out of your mind. And I was like, you know what? Stuff you. I'm going to do what I can right now, and I'm not going to wait. So I was approached by World Vision, and I was like, I have no leadership experience, but I want to create the youth organisation here in the ACT. And it was all about, at the time, World Vision didn't really have a lot of political engagement, but I was like, I live down the road from Canberra. Let me try and get in the doors of politicians. And that was around the massive push for the campaign for Australian aid and the increase for foreign aid, if everyone sort of remembers the 2015. And what I realised at that moment was, even though there was sort of discussions, one, getting in the room to politicians, especially government, was incredibly difficult. Getting politicians then engaged to talk about why we need increasing foreign aid, our social responsibility, what we play in our region, and that social license was even harder. And all politicians essentially wanted, from my perspective, was a quick photo op so they can put it on their social media. So fast forward a year later, I was invited to the White House by the First Lady Michelle Obama.
As you do.
And when I was there, they would launch the United States of Women Summit. It was all about activating citizenship engagement. It was about promoting participatory democracy and advancing human rights. Now, this was just before the 2016 election, and we all know what happened there. We're not going to talk about that. But at that time, no one thought what would happen would happen. And I left feeling so empowered, and I was like, how is it possible that the White House would invite just this random girl from Australia to engage with them, but I can't really engage with politicians when I live 10 minutes down the road? Fast forward, and the night of the US election, we all know what happened. I'm severely lactose intolerant, and I ate a tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream because I wanted my insides to hurt as much as my heart did. And I was like, yeah, anyone who's lactose intolerant knows it's a bad idea. But I sort of, my world came crashing down because I was like, how is this humanly possible? And I decided that I feel like Australia follows a trend where what happens in America, we're sort of a couple of years behind, but we generally follow that trend. And I was so scared that if a leader like President Trump could get in, what would that mean for our democracy? And I also saw there was a lack of citizenship engagement. So where is our pipeline of leaders? Where is our diversity? Where is parliamentarians that reflect the streets and the vibrancy of our communities? And so I was like, you know what? In order to create that pipeline, we also need to create space. We need to knock down the doors of Parliament, and we need to open it up across every single major party. We need to make sure that we're not just promoting one woman from the same background to go into one party, because our democracy is healthy and engaged when everyone's involved and everyone has the diversity. So that's where I created Girls Take Over Parliament. And the whole premise was not just to increase the level of young women getting into Parliament, but it's about building relationships. My whole philosophy when it comes to parliamentarians and what we try to teach our alumni is look past the party politics, look past their policies, and connect on a human level. Find out their why and connect with on that level. And then once you connect to their basic humanity, then we can start having really deep and meaningful conversations. And we started off with one politician, that was Gay Brodman, and I was like, hey Gay, can I come into your office for a day and just shadow you? And Gay was like, I'm not sure about the security about that, but you know what, let's check it out.
You're not a lobbyist. I don't know if we can let you in the building.
No, but it kind of worked. And then Gay was like, yeah, cool, works. Do you need help getting other politicians in the Labor Party? I was like, hell yeah. So then it started, and then we went to the Greens. We were like, hey, all these politicians are involved. Then we tried to tackle government. That was hard, but because we had Richard Di Natale, because we had the leader of the Labor Party, all of a sudden the government wanted to be involved. And then I remember being in the doctor's surgery, I got a phone call from Malcolm Turnbull's chief of staff, and Malcolm Turnbull was the Prime Minister at the time, and I don't generally answer phones, but I answered this one. Thank God I did. And she was like, the Prime Minister has heard about your program. He's really interested in it. We want to invite you. And that was just a game-changing moment for us. And so in terms of like your second question about getting women into democracy, for us, that was a catalyst moment. When you're talking about transformational activism, what we have seen through Girls Take Over Parliament is we've done a survey that prior to women entering our program, less than 20% see themselves involved in politics. They see politics as combative. They don't see themselves that there's a place, and they don't trust politicians. After our program, that increases to over 92%. We have had our alumni go on to run for office, to become ministerial advisors. They've gone on to create their own programs in India, in Pakistan. We've got young women who literally went to the UN earlier this year to advocate on advancement of human rights. The change to our democracy that we're seeing is, one, they are empowered to engage. They feel like there is a space. Two, politicians across the aisle are seeing the value of young people, and we have seen actual change from the policies that our young women have advocated for, and it's created actual difference. But also it's about showing that they are lifelong shapers and that they have a role to play.
Wow. I think we just need to give that a round of applause. That was extraordinary. Well, I'm very grateful to that very inspiring, uninspiring university lecturer that you had, and also Donald Trump, never thought I'd say that, for spurning on this incredible movement that you've begun, and just incredible to hear of the impact that young women and girls are being able to have as a result of that program. So the energy and passion emanating from you is just astounding. Now, for the first time in history, we have a group of, as they're dubbed, the Teals in Parliament, who campaign largely on climate, gender and transparency. And we have a record number of women and people from a diverse background in the Parliament. Yet many people in this room want to see more action. And we've got some big issues that we're trying to tackle, on a global scale: global health, tackling climate change, and a fit-for-purpose funding for our overseas aid programs. So what are your thoughts on that?
I guess I'll give the positive view, and then I'll also give the negative, because we need a balance. I'm really proud of our parliament, and that we have taken such a step in having the Teals who bring so much level of accountability to government. I think the Australian base of a two-party system and just that identity politics and the toxicness of it has meant that for generations there has not been any real courageous leadership in terms of public policy. And also because of our system and how it works, and that it's in a 3-year cycle, it's very short term. What can we do to get re-elected? There's not really that intergenerational mindset, which I feel should be the purpose of public policy. So with the introduction of the Teals, with the introduction of more diversity of women and cultures who think differently from the political elite, or politicians who don't see themselves as elite but have actually been around since they were 18 in politics. We are seeing Parliament shift. We are starting to have these discussions. Like David Pocock is a perfect example. He's known as the kingmaker in the Senate for a good reason, because he can challenge government with the power that he has to have better policy. Now, in saying that though, the issue that we sort of have is that they're not the majority. They're still not the majority. They're still not, and they don't have enough of the base to be able to push government in the direction that we really need to go on to start tackling cost of living crisis, to be able to take actionable change on climate. We're also not seeing, because of all of the impacts that we're seeing at home when it comes to racism, discrimination, misinformation. When it comes to the broader voters, the government essentially doesn't have a social license to invest in our foreign aid program, to invest in overseas development. If they do, we will see exactly what happened after Kevin Rudd and the Rudd-Gillard years of going, you are spending too much overseas, you need to spend more, look at your own backyard. I hated that thing where I was campaigning for the Australian aid, and that's happening again. We're seeing that, and it's been an explosion, especially after The Voice and this whole, what about me as an individual? So I think while it's amazing that Parliament is changing, and we need that, and I feel like that's going to keep changing, and I hope one day we don't just have a two-party system. But I think when it comes to social license, and this comes back to engagement with communities, it's about that one-on-one. That's what we need to really focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's going to be a very interesting election coming up. Watch this space. Caitlin, if you were a teacher and you were giving a report card on the current government, how do you think they're doing? What are your thoughts?
Oh, man. I'm saying this as an independent, I'm not representing anyone. I would say, look, they're better than the other lot. But not by much. Because when you look at the recent budget, like, for example, I'm so angry, I'm furious at, the night that we don't have a presidential system. The night that the Prime Minister was elected 2 years ago, which was essentially 2 years ago the other day, he said in his opening lines that he is going to commit to enacting the Uluru Statement in full. That is voice, treaty and truth. In the last budget, there was funding for not just the voice, but for treaty and truth for the Makarrata Commission. That's gone. We are seeing a walk back on social justice policies. We're seeing, like, when you look at HEX, for example, $3 million to fix the indexation is great temporary relief, but it's not the structural change that essentially, like Monique Ryan, for example, was calling for to change the indexation rate. The government, I think, they're not looking at the structural systemic issues that has been underlying. And like we were just talking about it earlier with the National Rally Against Women's Violence, you had the Prime Minister standing up before the nation. We saw what he did to Sarah, which was horrific, and I'm not going to go into that, but what he said was the government needs to fix it. Well, mate, you are the government. You've been in for 2 years and you're already starting to plan your next election. So what exactly are you doing? You can't just keep blaming the governments of the past. You have the ability to be courageous, to bring in some vision, like be disruptive, because our communities need that. And so that's why I'm saying they are doing a bit more than the other lot, but not much.
Mm. And how would you rate the state of our democracy in Australia?
I think, look, it's fair right now, but we're at the lowest level of trust for community trust in our democracy in history. We are on the precipice of democratic backsliding. It's not as much as India, where if I look at back home, this is probably the last ever democratic election if Modi gets in, which he will, and all of those massive issues we sort of don't have, but we're not immune to it. I think as Australians, we are so lucky that we have protection of our votes, that every single person, that we don't have to take that for granted. But it doesn't mean that the impacts of misinformation, disinformation, the impacts of trust in our institutions, like this is failing. So when you look at what's happening in America, when you're looking at what's happening in the UK, we have the potential to follow down that path. But I think there is a massive wake-up call. I think the government, this is the good thing about the government is doing. The government has created the Strengthening Democracy Task Force. So they have looked at the state of Australia's democracy. They've looked around the world and they're coming up with a game plan. And I think that's really good, because right now our democracy is okay, but we can never be complacent.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Caitlin. I've been so inspired hearing you speak and hearing your incredible story and the impact you're creating. So we're going to turn it over to you now if you've got some questions, and someone from the Results team might let me know if there are any questions online. Hope you're enjoying it from your bedrooms over there or kitchens. Great to have you on the line. Any questions in the room at all? Here we go, over here.
Thank you. So Results, and I assume Jazeera and Girls Take Over Parliament draw a lot from community and from a community around Australia. And I think since COVID, community action and drawing from that community has been just significantly harder and has just fundamentally changed. Should organisations, well, like specifically Results, but also like Jazeera and Girls Take Over Parliament, continue to have that community focus and continue to be drawing from that community? And if so, how best should they go about that, especially in the new context that we have today?
Thank you for that question. I think every single organisation within the non-for-profit sector is going through that same sort of pain points. It's how do we mobilise and engage with volunteers? How do we still meet the same impact and also increase the need? And honestly, Jazeera is taking a massive hit. We were talking about it before. Our overseas programs are still up and running, but actually Girls Take Over Parliament in Australia has stopped because just to get enough volunteers to be able to run the program like we have in the past. We're having young people who are trying to balance university and trying to pay their rent, and that's really difficult when you're like, we want you to donate your hours, but you need to live. And I think it is so important in today's day and age that we don't move away from community, that we continue to invest in people and we build their connections, because in a time of great loneliness, it's using organisations to bring people together, to show that there are like-minded people out there who share their same values, who share their same sense of social drive, and they want to make a difference in the world. I think that's what we need to, I think for Results, that's what you guys need to go back to, and you do it so well. Like, look at everyone who showed up today. It's about showing and leading with your values and going, there is a safe space for you to engage with, and we will help you and we will cultivate you and your leadership and that community. In terms of actually reaching out and engaging people, you've got to start, I think, from a young sort of age. You've got to start like going into, I don't know what Results does if you guys engage in schools or something like that, starting from a young age to show that these organisations are out there. And then also just working with parents and trying to get that sort of engagement. But I don't know, and then also like looking online, but I don't know what the future of engagement and community engagement will look like, because that's something that I'm sort of looking into. So I don't have a direct answer, but I think it's starting when you're young, showing that there's opportunities, but also showing the value of your organisation is, I think, the way that you start attracting people. Yeah.
Any other questions in the room or from our friends online? There's thousands of them online, I don't know how many there are. All right, well, in that case, we might leave it there. Can we give Caitlin the biggest round of applause for that wonderful insight? Extraordinary woman, and wonderful to have you in the room with us tonight. Just incredible. All right. Back to me in the studio over here. All right, so now it is time to get into our awards for this evening. So let me just reset here we go. So we are going to be acknowledging and celebrating the contribution tonight of some remarkable journalists, parliamentarians and activists who are working hard to create a better world without poverty. So we're going to start with the Media Award, as you can see on the screen. I love this. It's part, feels like the Golden Globes now, doesn't it? Here we go. All right, so the award recognises a journalist whose work has raised awareness of poverty, inequality or global health issues for which Results advocates. And the following journalists have been nominated by the Results community. So we have Jenna Clark, John Lyons, Stephen Jedgitz and Tom Crowley. And the winner is, do we have a drum roll? Yeah, let's do it. And the winner is Stephen Jedgitz. Stephen can't be with us tonight, but he has recorded a video, but I'll just share a little bit about him. Stephen is the ABC's Foreign Affairs reporter for the Asia Pacific. He's based in the National Broadcasters Parliament House Bureau. His work focuses on Australian relationships with countries across the region. And he's also written for Australian Foreign Affairs, the Lowy Institutes, The Interpreter, and the Australian Strategic Policy Institute's The Strategist. Stephen provides expert analysis on foreign affairs and international news on the ABC. His analysis and insights, especially on the Pacific, are astute and sensitive to the complexity of the region. So congratulations, Stephen. And now we'll cross live to Stephen. It's not live, but
Hi, it's Stephen Jedgitz here from ABC News in Parliament House in Canberra. I'm sorry I can't be with you in Sydney this evening, but I'd like to say thank you to Results International Australia and on behalf of the entire ABC for the Media Leadership Award that you're handing to us today. I think the theme that you've picked up on is a really important one. One thing that I see a lot in my reporting is the really critical role that civil society plays throughout our whole region. Obviously, there's a big focus on the role of civil society here in Australia. But in a lot of my reporting in the broader Indo-Pacific region, either in South Asia or in Southeast Asia, as well as, of course, in North Asia, one of the things that's become really apparent to me is just how much pressure civil society is under in a lot of countries across the board. This pressure, of course, can take a number of forms. Sometimes you see it in the threats that are made to funding bases or funding streams. Sometimes it comes in the shape of direct threats to revoke the registration or licenses of civil society organisations. Sometimes it comes in the forms of threats of violence. And I think whenever those threats emerge and whenever civil society is eroded, the region and those countries are inevitably poorer for it. Now, sometimes leaders in the region might see civil society as a threat to their plans, whether that's plans for rapid economic growth or whether it's plans for their strategic imperatives. But one thing that I truly believe, and I think that many of my colleagues truly believe, is that civil society, whether it's here in Australia or whether it's in countries like Indonesia or India, make countries stronger, not weaker, and that the criticisms that they might level are not aimed at trying to tear those countries or those governments down, but rather to build them up, to make them stronger and more prosperous in the long term. And that's one message that I hope organisations like yours can give, not just in the messaging you're sending, but also in the work that you do. And certainly the ABC is committed, along with many other media organisations, to highlighting the critical work that civil society does, not just here in Australia, but in the region more broadly. Thanks again for this award on behalf of the ABC. We appreciate being appreciated, and it's great to see what we do being noticed by people outside this building and in other parts of the big wide world. We appreciate the award. Thank you, and all the best from here in Parliament House.
Could you hear that okay up the back there? Yeah, it is very low. Apologies for that. But it's actually a teaching strategy. I used to teach speech and drama, and they said if you've got a really rowdy group, you speak really softly. And instead they're all, what are you saying? So thank you for tuning in and really listening then. And congratulations, Stephen. All right, on to the Political Leadership Award. So this award, speaking of some of your friends, Caitlin, in the Parliament, recognises parliamentarians who have shown strong leadership in the fight to end global poverty. The following parliamentarians have been nominated by the Results community. We've got Ms Kate Thwaites, MP, Senator Louise Pratt, the Honourable Michelle Landy, MP, Dr Sophie Scomps, MP, and Ms Zoe Daniels, MP. And the winner is, should we do a drum roll again? Come on, why not? And the winner is Kate Thwaites. Let's give her a round of applause. Kate came to Parliament in 2019 and she represents the division of Jagga Jagga. She's been a journalist, a public servant, and once worked for Oxfam as well. She's also a proud mum of 2 young children. Kate's been an incredible advocate for ending global poverty, including tackling tuberculosis. And every day, 600 children around the world needlessly die of TB, and Results would not be able to lead the TB efforts in Australia and across the region without the dedication and commitment of Kate and her staff. So congratulations, Kate. And we also have a video from Kate. Is that anything we can do on the volume, or that's our, yeah. We'll all just... Yeah, and we'll really actively listen again. Fantastic.
Good evening. I'm sorry I can't be there with you tonight to accept this award in person. It is a great honour to receive the Political Leadership Award and to continue to have the opportunity to work alongside all of you at Results Australia and support your efforts to end poverty around the world. In my role as co-chair of the Australian Parliament's TB Caucus, it's my privilege to invite you and other advocates into the Parliament to share the message of how Australia can help win the fight against TB in our region and across the world. And while it can't be said for many issues, I'm pleased to say that right across the Parliament, there's agreement on taking action on TB in our region and across the world. This is a testament to the work of Results and all the other advocates for Australia investing in global health. Earlier this year, the Australian Government announced we will invest $17 million in the Global Alliance for TB, focusing on developing more effective treatments, making sure those treatments are affordable, and are reaching the people most in need, particularly in our region. Australia is an important partner in our region. More importantly, we're a friend. We recognise that we must be a good neighbour and work together with our Pacific friends to improve the health and well-being of Pacific communities. I'm sure I don't need to tell those of you in the room tonight that while our focus is on TB and better health outcomes, this work also makes a wider contribution to supporting a peaceful, stable and prosperous Pacific. It is a time of change in the region and there are challenges. And so, just as we are a good neighbour in supporting good health, we must also be a good neighbour in supporting democracies in the region, as well as working to protect our democracy at home. And I know this is part of what you've been discussing tonight as well. Another part of my work in the Parliament is chairing the Joint Standing Committee on Electoral Matters. Through that work, I've looked closely at the pressures on democracies the world over, including our own. Misinformation and disinformation, the influence of AI, and the presence of those who are trying to divide people and communities. These are all very real threats that we face. And while governments can and must play a leadership role in addressing these challenges, what I also know is that this cannot be our only response. We do need to support civil society and citizen advocates, those who understand their communities best. The people who know the histories, the local context, the concerns, who best understand how to deal with some of the challenges being faced. So I commend those who I know are in the room tonight and are working hard to elevate local voices here and abroad. Thank you for your efforts. Our Parliament, our country and our region are all the stronger for your voices. And again, I want to thank Results Australia for awarding me the Political Leadership Award for 2024. It is a great honour and I look forward to continuing to working with you in our fight to end TB.
Congratulations, Kate. And now I'd like to ask the chair of Results, Tarina and Marie, to come join me for the next two awards. If you could come up with me. Right, so I'll do this one first. All right, so the next award is the Advocates Award, and the following Results advocates have been nominated by the Results community as having shown outstanding leadership in the fight to end global poverty. Lily Koch, who is in the room tonight. Lily, can you give us a wave? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Lily. Yeah, give her a round of applause. Michaela Izella, Paula Nguyen and Rahab Manwaniki, my apologies. And Results Chair, Tarina, can you please join me over here? We've got the award there.
Thank you.
And Rahab, can you, are you in the room with us?
Rahab is our winner.
Oh, there she is, Rahab. Thank you. For a moment, I thought you weren't here. Rahab is come on up, Rahab. Rahab is truly committed to advancing health equity. She has met with many MPs, helped light up the country to shine a light on TB, and rallied other advocates to take action on ending global poverty. We are thrilled to be recognising Rahab's distinctive contribution. And I'll pass over to you to say some words if you'd like.
Oh,
You can use the microphone. Put you on the spot. Congratulations.
I had written a speech, 3-page speech. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Results Australia. I'm based in Melbourne, so I am a new migrant. I just came to Melbourne for other business, and I decided to join a movement I've known for many years to volunteer for the work they do for some of us down under, on the other side, not in Asia. So it gives me great pleasure to be here, to be honored, and to be given this recognition. Coincidentally, we also celebrate National Volunteer Week and are reminded of the critical role that we volunteers play in upholding democracy and fighting for human rights. This recognition is not just for me, but for every individual who has contributed to our cause of ending poverty. It reflects our collective commitment to end poverty and injustice worldwide. In a world where democracy tethers on the edge and human rights are constantly under threat, Advocate stands as beacon of hope and resilience. Their tireless efforts in advocating for equality, justice, and freedom epitome the spirit of democracy. By volunteering their time, skills, and resources, they champion the rights of the marginalized, empower community, and foster a more inclusive society. Yet our work is far from over, especially now after COVID. In the face of rising authoritarianism and social injustices, we must continue to stand united in our pursuit of a prosperous world for all. Let us affirm our commitment as advocates to be stronger for positive change and collectively strive towards a future where human rights are upheld, democracy flourishes, and every individual thrives. And I want to take this opportunity to my Member of Parliament down in Melbourne. He's called Keith Wallahan. He's been very supportive to our campaigns as a result. He's the federal member for Menzies. He's really, I meet him everywhere, town hall. I'm like, oh, you're from Results. Oh, yeah, I'm like, yeah, so this time we want money for Global Fund. This time we want money for Gavi. And he's like, come. And so he's been very supportive of the cause. So together we've proven that change is possible. 2 years ago at the Global Fund replenishment, Australia did tremendous work. They gave us $260 million, which was more than double what was in the previous replenishment. This is very good work for the advocates. So this award reminds me of the work that still lies ahead. Immunization has improved, but we are still not yet there. In Africa, unlike you in Australia, we still have challenges to get all children immunized. So the issue, as what Sam said, children under 5 cannot still get the full immunization. Our children are dying from measles, from DPT, and from tuberculosis, because BCG is obsolete. But I'm happy the government has given some more money for research. With continued dedication and collaboration, we can create a world where every person has the opportunity to thrive. Thank you, advocates, for believing in the power of advocacy. Together, we can build a better world for generations to come. Thank you so much.
Absolutely fantastic, and thank you for those beautiful words that you shared with us tonight. And we come to our final award. This is the Fellow Award. The following Results Fellows have been nominated by the Results community as having shown outstanding leadership in the fight to end global poverty. And the nominees are, we have Alex Norden, Ben Anderson, and I believe Ben is in the room tonight. Hi, Ben. Congratulations. Elim Tai and Francesca Sanna. And Results Ambassador Murray Nutt is going to join me and offer our winner, who is Alex Norden, his award. Please give Alex a big round of applause. And Alex has been a tireless leader and advocate on a number of global health issues. He's deeply committed and has shown great leadership amongst his fellowship cohort, and we are delighted to acknowledge him tonight. Would you like to say some words?
Thank you, everyone. Very big shoes to fill, given the 3 speakers before me, but I'll do my best. I don't have a printer at home, so if you'll excuse the... I don't know who has a printer at home these days. It's also been a long time since I did public speaking. The last time was at my wedding, so I apologise again in advance. So the Results Fellowship, I was a fellow last year, and I, much like the person that Sam Daley-Harris was speaking to, I had very little experience with advocacy beforehand. I sort of knew of the concept, but in terms of practice, I really had no idea. And so I think I was very grateful for the retreat that we did in Canberra, the work of the Results staff as well, to really teach us the importance of advocacy, how to do it, as well as why. I think that was the really important sort of impetus for that process. The Results Fellowship was also a really amazing opportunity to connect with like-minded people, many of who are here tonight. I think we all understand the importance of the work that we're doing together, and I think it's a delicate balance, because you have to celebrate the victories you have, but also acknowledge all the work that is still ahead of you. And I think that's where communities like ours are so critical. I think another thing was that the fellowship really taught me the power of the individual. I think you can so often feel powerless or helpless, particularly at the moment when we see a lot of anti-democratic movements, we see a lot of mis and disinformation, and the internet is just a terrible place sometimes. And I think organizations like this and communities like this really help to give people the inspiration to do the work that they need to do. I don't know a lot about democracy and health, but I am currently doing a Masters of Public Health, and so at the moment I've been doing some work looking at health system resilience. And so what I learned was that health system resilience is often looked at through the lens of the World Health Organization building blocks. And so there are 6. There's service delivery, health workforce, health information systems, access to essential medicines and technology, and then there's also financing and leadership and governance. And so when looking at the building blocks, people will often compare health systems, and all 6 of the building blocks are sort of considered as equal. But I think it's really important to understand that particularly leadership and governance and financing really inform the other 4. And so in order to enable service delivery, enable a positive health workforce, you really need strong financing and really strong leadership and governance. And I think that's where the political will and the power behind these organizations really comes into play. Thanks. That's it.
Well, turns out you're a great public speaker, Alex, so sorry, you're going to have to do more of that. It is now my pleasure to welcome the incredible Nagaya Chawley, CEO of Results Australia, to say some final words.
Thank you so much, Briony. It's a gorgeous photo of you and your partner there. It's gorgeous. I wanted to start by echoing a huge congratulations to the recipients of tonight's awards, Stephen, Kate, Rahab, and Alex, and really acknowledge your vital leadership. Rahab, as you were speaking, I couldn't help but think about Sam's vision 40 years ago of creating a movement, and you think 40 years later, right across the other side of the world, there you are speaking to your local MP about the Global Fund and helping raise $266 million for the Global Fund to fight TB, HIV and malaria. So talk about a sign of hope. I mean, that was just extraordinary. So thank you so much for your story. Cause-based organisations are often good at promoting certain causes, from global health to gun control to the great campaign for Australian aid that you talked about so beautifully, Caitlin. But of course, in our efforts to advance a certain cause, we're also doing something else in tandem. We're bringing often forgotten issues right into the light. We're telling our elected officials what we care about, and we're helping steer government funding, just as you did, Rahab, to resources, at government funding and resources right to where it's needed most. This, of course, is the very essence of a healthy, thriving democracy. So tonight has very much been not just a celebration of citizen advocacy, but also a recognition of its singular role in safeguarding our democracies, which is more important, of course, than ever before. Some brief thank yous. I want to start by thanking Colin Biggers and Paisley, and in particular I think it's Brett and Matt for providing and helping create this fabulous space. I think it's the third event we've done in this space, so we're so appreciative of your sponsorship and your long-standing support of our work. I want to thank in particular the incredible Results team. I'll start by thanking Zeph. I want to thank Anne. I want to thank Grace and Vicky. I also again want to send a very warm welcome to Jennifer Peake, who's just arrived today from Melbourne. She doesn't start with us until next week, but it's just fabulous to have you on board. But most importantly, none of tonight, and we've got people around the country in different parts of the world joining us online as well, and none of it could have happened without the blood, sweat and tears of Amelia Richardson standing right there at the back, who has pulled together a beautiful event. So thank you so much, Amelia. And I think we've got some delicious chocolate for you, which almost got eaten this afternoon after lunch, but there you go, it's there for you in the box. Thank you so much for all your work. I also want to thank our deeply inspiring speakers. It was fabulous to have the founder of the organisation share those words of wisdom tonight. But also, Caitlin, your energy, as Briony said, was infectious. It was just fabulous to hear your story. And women taking over Parliament, I hope it gets more funding because, my God, we need women and girls doing everything we can to have a strong voice. I also want to thank the fabulous Briony Benjamin for bringing the sparkle into tonight, as you do with every event. So thank you so much. And most importantly, I want to thank all of you, again, the people in the room, but also online. I sat in a cafe this afternoon and was looking at Sam Daley-Harris's revised book. I was kind of skim reading it urgently in preparation for tonight, and it's a brilliant book, and I strongly suggest reading it. Our origin story is pretty important, and it's an incredible story. But he used an interesting set of words. He talked about this work as being sacred and profound. So I just want to acknowledge all of you in doing that really important, sacred and profound work. And as we know, the stakes have never been higher, so thank you so much. Just before I hand back to the fabulous Briony, I want to highlight our custodian circle, which has been put together by Vicky Taylor. As we all know, a custodian is someone who takes care of or protects something. And this is exactly what our regular donors do at Results. Our custodians ensure we continue to advocate for a world free from extreme poverty. As Caitlin was saying, this work's so important, but it's difficult to get the funding for it. So if you're interested in becoming part of our custodian circle, please do speak with the wonderful Vicky, who will be, she's standing at the back at the moment. I'm more than happy to talk to you about what it means to become part of the circle. I think Vicky's also put some gorgeous, colourful posters around the room as well. If you want to know more, you can sign up to the QR code. So thank you so much again. It's been wonderful to come together. The Results community is now spread right across the country, and it's rare that we get the opportunity to come together and be face to face and really celebrate the work that we do. So I just want to acknowledge all of you and thank you. Back to Briony.
Thank you for those beautiful words, Nagaya. And that brings to a close the formal parts of this evening, and we're going to have some drinks and nibbles outside. I asked Sam earlier tonight in that interview, how do you remain hopeful, in the face of such complex, big issues that we face? And I think I found the answer, and it's to spend time with inspiring people that are out there acting and making impressive change in the world. I've just been so inspired hearing the stories and hearing from the award winners tonight about the wonderful work you're doing. So thank you to each and every one of you for being here tonight. Thank you for your commitment to making the world a better place, and look forward to continuing the conversation out in the foyer over some drinks. Thank you so much.